Happy Saturday, everybody, and happy Iron Bowl Saturday at that. Welcome into the pregame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. He's Matt Scalisi. I'm Simone Eli. Guys, it's a great day all throughout this state. It feels wonderful outside. Alabama and Auburn going head-to-head on the Plains. Kickoff set for 2:30 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And doesn't get any better than this. The 86th Iron Bowl, the SEC on CBS, game of the week like it typically is, a year in and year out, regardless of what the rankings look like, regardless of what the standings look like. This game is a game that it means so much to so many people in this state, Matt, and it's just one of the best days of the year.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say this, Simone, especially for the folks who have grown up here. It is a memorable day. It is an exciting day. There are a lot of people right now, perhaps some watching this, who are saying to themselves, I cannot wait for this day to be over, because there's a lot of nerves that accompany all that excitement. And, you know, I certainly sympathize with those folks. I would say try and remember it's only a game. Try and have fun with it. Try and enjoy that feeling in the pit of your stomach, the nerves. Because look, if you're nervous about something, it just means you care about it, and it means something to you. So try and enjoy it as much as you can today, even if you're going to spend every minute until 2:30 with that big ball of nerves in your stomach.
No doubt. And for those wondering, I know there's a lot of Auburn fans and Alabama fans watching right now. We have both graphics going right now. It says Alabama pregame. Matt can change that with the click of a button to the Auburn pregame show. So, guys, we're spreading the love. No bias here from Matt and I. We are right down the middle. We're just simply talking about the game. But if you're just tuning in, this is the Iron Bowl pregame show. Bama and Auburn, brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. Kickoff set for 2:30 on the Plains today, Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's going to be a beautiful day if you're going to the game. Whether you're a Bama fan, Auburn fan, or whatever, we can all agree that the fall weather has been nice in this state. I think about what things felt like a few months ago. It was not that great. All right, guys, we're going to talk first about this rivalry and what Nick Saban had to say this week. We're going to talk about Coach. He was on his radio show this week and caught a lot of national attention when talking about people expecting Alabama to go into games and win. He was asked this question. I know a lot of folks saw this. There was one specific part of this 4-minute rant that caught my attention, Matt, that I would like to run here in the show. And to Saban talking specifically about teams coming off of a couple of losses like we're seeing Auburn right now. Here's what Coach had to say.
Every time a team loses 2 games, everybody says that team's done. And it's really just the opposite. Like Texas A&M lost 2 games before we played. I said it's a dangerous team, because these guys have pride in performance. They want to have a good team. They've had 2 disappointing losses. That makes them dangerous. They're humiliated by what's happened the last 2 games. Same thing when we played LSU. Everybody says, oh, they lost 2 games in a row. They're not any good anymore. We're just going to blow them out. It's just the opposite. It's just the opposite of that. They're competitors. They have moms and dads. They have pride in performance. They have things that they want to accomplish and they want to do, and they want to be good. They don't just throw in the towel. They work harder to try to get better, and everybody wants to beat us.
Okay, I don't think that there is a more applicable statement from Nick Saban. And you know this is exactly what he has been saying to his players all week in the locker room, Matt, because Auburn is coming off a 3-game losing streak right now. You know, they got moms and dads. They got people they want to make proud. They ain't trying to, end this season on a 4-game losing streak. I mean, that doesn't happen. So what is the mindset on both sides for these teams, in your opinion?
I think he's never been more correct about that specific sentiment than he has been this year, because I think this, for folks who have watched Alabama this year, they know that this Alabama team has been incredibly unpredictable from week to week. Yeah. They have some great players who have been performing consistently well, but as a team, they have had some issues that will seem to be there and plague them one week, then be totally gone the next week, and then the next week it's back again. And I think particularly we've seen that on the defensive side of the ball, but Alabama's offensive line has had some issues, in certain games that haven't been a problem for them in other games. So I think that's really one thing that I think worries Saban and probably worries Alabama fans going into this game. It doesn't matter what Alabama's average stats are for the whole season on a game-to-game basis. We've seen Alabama have really tough times offensively, and we've seen them score 50 points like it was nothing. We've seen them have really strong defensive outings, and then we've seen them, like last week against Arkansas, for example, where they couldn't seem to get a stop as the game went along. So it's certainly not the case that even though Alabama is a one-loss team, they have some of the best offensive stats in the country.
Yeah,
it's not the case that this is an Alabama team that is incapable of having a down day. We've seen it happen many times.
Yeah, and we really don't know what type of team the Tide are going to look like until they roll out there at 2:30 at Jordan-Hare. It's a rivalry game. You got to imagine the guys are going to be fired up. You mentioned stats, Matt, how much they really aren't significant when it applies to this team because, like you said, you never know what you're going to get. But the offense is averaging 44 points per game. That does lead the SEC. So the big thing for Auburn is trying to slow down guys like Bryce Young, like Jamison Williams. I mean that he gets out in space and there's just no stopping him. How big of a task is this going to be for Brian Harsin, Derek Mason, and company when it comes to game planning? Obviously, they have all week, but actually rolling out there at 2:30 when this game kicks off and trying to stop this high-powered offense that when they start going, they can really go.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big challenge for Auburn, and honestly, I think they've played a lot of really good teams this year. I think this Auburn team is battle tested. But that said, I think on paper, I don't know that there's a better offense that they've played this year statistically, and in fact, it kind of might be a pretty substantial gap between Alabama and everybody else. Mississippi State obviously has looked really good at times, and they've been on a roll of late offensively, but I think there's not another offense that can do as many things to hurt you as Alabama's has that Auburn has seen this year. So, I think this Auburn defense has some really good pieces. I think we've seen them play really good football, but defending, Brian Robinson on the ground and defending Jamison Williams deep down the field, and on top of all of that, you've got a handful of other wide receivers and tight ends who can turn medium range plays into big plays, and a quarterback in Bryce Young that really doesn't make very many mistakes throwing the ball. Yeah. It's a very tough assignment to win every single individual battle you have to win out there on the field to get a stop.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, this is the Iron Bowl pregame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. Let's talk about Auburn a little bit. I've heard a couple times this week from Bama fans how thankful they are that Gus Malzahn is no longer at Auburn. It's not like Gus was out there winning national championships every single year, but he did win a handful of Iron Bowls, including the last 2 on the Plains, the last 3 of 4, and we know that when Jordan-Hare gets rocking, it can get kind of crazy over there. We've seen crazy things happen. Saban has alluded to that, but this is Brian Harsin's first Iron Bowl ever. He wants to go out with a win before going into a bowl game. You don't want to finish 6-6. I mean, that's extremely subpar for what the Tigers expect from their program. And if you think about where this program was at a month ago, going into the month of November, I mean, we're talking about potentially contending for the SEC West. Now they're contending to not be last in the SEC West. So Auburn's really trying to get this rivalry win. Here's what Coach Harsin had to say when it comes to how much this game means, how much he is starting to understand what this rivalry means.
We have to prove ourselves, and this week is no different. What is different about this week is, our seniors, obviously the game, there's a difference to that because it is a rivalry game. And you're playing against a really good football team. But for us, we're always trying to play our best football each and every week. And how we do that is we get ourselves prepared to go out there and play like that through a great week of work, and then having that attitude and mentality of proving yourself every day. So when it's time to do it on game day, that's just what you do.
All right, so that was Auburn first-year head coach Brian Harsin. I heard an interview this week from Auburn radio announcer Andy Burcham talking about Brian Harsin's first opportunity to go out there and coach this game and what it feels like. And I thought Andy made a great point. He said, he's not going to know what this game is like until this game kicks off. I mean, regardless of people tell you, until you experience it. And, man, that's the truth in the media as well. I mean, the 2013 Iron Bowl, the Kick Six was the first one I ever experienced, and Lord knows that was an experience. So until you really are there hands-on and actually feeling what it feels like and going through the motions, Matt, you really don't understand what it's like to be on the sideline, coaching this game, covering this game, playing in this game.
I'll take your word for it, Simone, because I was born into this. I'm a Birmingham native, so I've been kind of aware of this game my entire life, and I do think it probably would be pretty tough to get a sense of the magnitude of this game without ever having been there in person. I think you can really, I mean, and I've been to enough of these both in Tuscaloosa and Auburn. I've been to a few in Birmingham because I'm old enough.
Wow, Matt, he has put himself out there, y'all, this morning.
Yeah, but you can, I mean, it's visceral in the building. You can feel as loud as Jordan Hare gets. I think there is a different level of energy and passion when this game kicks off, because it almost feels surreal when you've heard people talking about Alabama and Auburn and the rivalry all year long, and you look down on the field and you see both teams on the field. There's a moment there were it's like, I can't believe this is actually happening right now. And I think that's a tough thing to kind of get your head around if you're not part of this, if you were not growing up in this environment. But, you know, look, that said, I think that Brian Harsin having kind of a cool head and being a little bit detached from all of this could be an advantage given the situation. I think his players are going to have very high emotions coming into this game. Maybe part of what could help them is sort of somebody keeping an even keel during it. And to me, that's what Brian Harsin is so far. I don't think he's a guy with overflowing emotion. I think he's kind of he is an X's and O's guy who is focused on kind of the practicalities of what's going on. Sometimes you need some passion, but I think in the early part of this game, you're not going to need to add emotion to what's going on. It's going to be there in droves.
Yeah, and for one guy in particular, and that's going to be quarterback TJ Finley. One of the biggest differences in this Iron Bowl as compared to the last couple of years is there is no Bo Nix, which is always a big question mark in what is Bo going to do? Is Bo going to be this Bo? Is Bo going to be this Bo? And Bo's not going to be there. Bo's going to be on the sideline. And obviously he's a guy who grew up in this rivalry. His dad played for Auburn. The game means a lot to him. So TJ Finley getting the start, he has very limited experience when it comes to meaningful experience this season already. I'm not going to say that him not being a part of this rivalry ever before is an advantage, because I don't think that's necessarily true. Although I do think that he has a chip on his shoulder to go out there and prove I can get this done, and if I'm given the opportunity, which he has.
For sure. I think that him having that moment in Jordan Hare earlier this season is still valuable. It was against a very different opponent than he's going to see today. But I think that he understands the passion of SEC football without question. Does he get the Iron Bowl is a different question, and I'm not sure very many quarterbacks do. I know Bo Nix does. I can say with confidence after his comments this week that Bo Nix gets the Iron Bowl for sure. But he's not going to be available out there today. You know, look, on the other side, you've got a bunch of players, and I think this is a little bit of an underrated factor. You got a bunch of players for Alabama that come from all over the country. And while that has helped give them an elite roster that very few other teams can compete with, they also are a lot of guys who the Iron Bowl doesn't necessarily mean that much to them. It's the next game on the schedule. I think they can sense from their fans that it means a lot. But I don't know that Bryce Young, a guy from California, grew up thinking about the Iron Bowl or even knowing how important it was to anybody. I know, and I think that's probably true for Jameson Williams too, the other arguably best player on this Alabama team. He's a guy who was playing for Ohio State in January of 2021. So a lot of these guys are incredibly talented players. They play well together for the most part, but they don't necessarily have this sort of cultural feel for the Iron Bowl. Yeah, and I think Auburn, just by the nature of its roster, has a lot more guys that grew up aware of the Iron Bowl.
That's a really, really good point. Never thought about it like that, but honestly, that actually makes a lot of sense. All right, guys, 2:30 kickoff on the Plains. This is the Iron Bowl pregame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. Matt, quickly before we let folks go, the playoff implications, the national implications that this game has for Alabama are pretty high. Should the Tide be a 2-loss team after tonight? That would be pretty significant going into the SEC title game. Obviously, if they were going to go on and beat Georgia, I mean, not only would that be a huge turn of events to lose to an Auburn team and turn around and beat the number 1 ranked team in the country, but regardless, that has to be in the back of the minds of these players beyond, okay, this is a rivalry game. So, yes, we talked about guys being from out of town, not really being ingrained in the cultural meaning of the Iron Bowl, but they surely understand the national implications of this game and what it means to get it done in terms of record and in terms of going into the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I've been of the opinion since that Texas A&M loss happened that Alabama didn't have a margin for error. They were going to have to win out to get into the playoffs. Maybe there's an outside chance that a 2-loss team gets into the playoffs, but it would be unprecedented. And I don't think you want to leave it in the hands of forcing the committee to have to do something they've never done before to make an exception for you, basically. So I think Alabama has to assume that any loss, whether it's to Auburn or Georgia, knocks them out of contention for the playoffs. And I think it more than likely would. Losing to Auburn would obviously be a tougher loss than losing to Georgia, just because the way that the last 3 games have gone has really affected the perception of Auburn, I think, with the committee. And I'm not sure that this would be considered a bad loss, but it would not be on the same level of losing to a ranked Texas A&M, a now ranked Texas A&M team on the road, at the last second. I think this would be a little bit of a tougher loss for the committee to swallow. So I think Alabama has to approach this game as a do or die. They cannot afford to lose this game.
Yep. We will see, guys. 2:30 kickoff. Alabama are about 3 touchdown favorites in this game. The Iron Bowl, the SEC on CBS game of the week. A lot to look forward to. As Nick Saban says, this is a game that means a lot to a lot of people, and it certainly does to a lot of the folks who are tuning in and commenting on the show. We appreciate that. We will see you guys for the post-game show sometime after the game wraps up at Jordan-Hare Stadium. If you're going to the game, enjoy. Maybe take a light jacket. Looks like it could get a little bit chilly. Definitely fall weather. But regardless, guys, enjoy the game. The 86th Iron Bowl kicks off at 2:30 on the Plains. Thanks so much for tuning in. The Iron Bowl pregame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. For Matt Scalisi, I'm Simone Eli. Enjoy the rest of y'all's Saturday, and we'll see you tonight.
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.